Hi there, it's Carl Irwin, and I don't engage in the Linux audio development scene very much. I have a channel that I very rarely frequent, and I make tutorials mostly based on Qtractor. I've been a part of this discussion here on Unfa's channel on a couple of videos that have been posted, which he's reposted about here. And you can see some of the videos that I have posted there and some documentation that I've put together looking at copyright law, particularly in the United States, as it relates to this question about CC licensing and the way it can or cannot be, or should not be applied to music, rather sample libraries and music compositions. And you can see some of the arguments there related to derivative works versus transformative applications pertaining to U.S. copyright law under the terms of fair use. So this is all legal terminology, not really interpretive. It's in the law. One thing I would point out, a couple things I would impress on the conversation here is that, as is the way law works, you can't really determine some things without litigation. When you challenge something in a law, it actually requires that someone make a claim. And I would point to the fact that there's not been claims on this topic. They don't exist, in spite of the fact that this has been an issue for decades, and there still hasn't really been any kind of claim about licensing being misused in the creation of a musical work regarding the licensing on the library. Right? The library, the reason why that is because the library is made to be used to render music. That's what it's for. So people make these libraries not so that they would not be used for music, and they don't make them so that they can get a copyright claim on other people's music or on music in general, because the library is not music. Music is a specifically differentiated material for copyright, and the library itself is not that music. It just can't be. So that's one point I would drive home, is that they are intended, libraries are intended to be used. They are exactly the same thing as a synthesizer that has samples. The second thing I want to impress on you as a fact, again, not interpretive, just as a fact, is that the commercial products and samplers do not have language that relinquish copyright claims on music that's made from the sampler or from the library. So if you look at commercial grade products, there's no language that relinquishes any rights. Now, when you're looking at CC, again, I'll say it again, CC licensing cannot create new rights. CC licensing only allows the creator to relinquish rights or retain rights that exist in law. So you can't have a CC license applied and have that create additional rights in addition to what is covered under copyright law. So when you're dealing with commercial products or a synthesizer that has samples in it, the reason why there's no language to relinquish rights is because they can't claim a right to the music by doing that. It just doesn't exist. It doesn't exist in copyright law. If you go by the interpretation that they do have rights or could claim rights, well, then you have a problem, because nobody should be using commercial products. Like, nobody should be using any kind of Roland, synthesizer that has pre-recorded samples in it. You should not, because there's no language that relinquishes rights. Therefore, you're in danger of having copyright infringement by using these samples in your music. See, it doesn't work that way in the law. That's why there's no language for it. What you have in the licensing for commercial products or those samplers or synthesizers with sampled sounds is you have language that reinforces what copyright does claim, and that is that those samples themselves as a library are under copyright protection as a library. You can't sample sound library and create a new library from it, or a new instrument or something like that. You should not do that. So if I take a sample, one sound from an East West or Spitfire library, and I make an instrument out of that, I have violated copyright law, because I've made a thing that's in kind to where I took the source from. I have violated that product. When I record music, rendering using their sample library, their instrument, I'm doing exactly what the creation of that instrument is intended for. They don't have rights on my music that they can claim or relinquish. That's why they don't claim or relinquish them. Okay, so keep that in mind. Commercial products don't relinquish rights because they don't have a claim on rights. Not only do they not have a claim on rights to the music, people who create their own libraries and release them under CC licensing, they don't have a claim on them either, nor can they create one with CC licensing. Unfa brought up the Drum Gizmo packs, that website, and they have a number of different kits on there, and there are places where they claim CC BY for attribution, and then there's language in there talking about crediting, proper crediting. Please understand that the language that's in addition to the license is actually what applies to crediting in music compositions. It's not the CC BY license. The CC BY license does not have the ability to apply that kind of crediting. That's why the language is in addition to the license. For example, you'll find, some of those kits on there will say CC BY, or it'll be Creative Commons, 4.0 or whatever the distinction is. I honestly don't keep up with it. But and then after that, it says, for example, in a context where other performers, in a musical composition, when used in a musical composition, in a context where other performers are credited, the kit must be attributed, it must get attribution as a source. But see, that is additional licensing. That's not part of CC. If you want to have that kind of licensing, you have to write that down. You can. Anybody can create any kind of licensing they want. You can create a product and you can create the stipulations by which it's used. It's not necessarily protected under copyright law, but it can be protected contractually, right? You can create any kind of license that you want. You don't have to use a CC kind of application. What is CC for? CC is to make things easy for people who are dealing in copyright issues, right? People that want to release things to be used without getting without giving up all of their rights, or to make it very simple so that everybody can understand that they're giving up the thing that they created and retaining zero rights, CC 0, right? So that's what it does. CC licensing merely is language that is available for people to use to make their claims about what they're giving up in copyright and what they're keeping in copyright. But copyright law, wherever you live, in whatever jurisdiction you're under, that is the rule. It's the law itself. It's not the CC license. Okay, so now the other question that came up real quick here, I'll try to be quick. The other thing that came up was, I don't know, I think Unfa said in a comment here, I don't know if a person creating a library knows that CC BY doesn't apply in this way that they may think, that they should get attribution on musical compositions. Well, my answer to that is, it's not that I don't care. My answer to that is that I can't care. I can't care about that, right? Legally, it's not my problem. It just legally is not my problem. Ethically, it can't be my problem because I'm not the one applying the license. So just at a very cold factual, stepping off point here, when someone is applying a license, it's up to them to know what the license does and does not do. It's not up to the end user to know what their intentions are. As a creator, it's my responsibility to spell out my intentions completely. Now, do we need to worry that there's a bunch of people that misunderstand this and say, well, everyone's stupid out there using CC licenses? Okay, I don't think I would assume that. On the other hand, I think that people that are creating these libraries, they do know what the license does and does not do. And when people are using these licenses, these CC BY with attribution, they know what they're seeking attribution for. That's why they're applying it, right? In the case of Drum Gizmo, you can see that they know what CC BY does and does not do. That's why they added the additional licensing terms whenever people are attributing performers in their musical rendering, right? That's a very bizarre thing. They have to add that language in order for it to apply. CC doesn't cover that. So hopefully this is clear enough. I'll tell you what, the more we go back and forth on this, the less I feel that this really is interpretive. Why does CC not give a straight answer on it? The answer is not that they really don't know, right? The answer is that they don't have a right to say. They don't have a right to say. It's not that they don't care, it's that they can't care. Just like I said before, it's not their problem. They're an organization that says this is copyright law. These are the licenses that we give that relinquish some or all of copyright and retain some or parts of copyright. That is their interest. Their interest is not in claim. They simply can't say what some people want them to weigh in on. They're not an authority. They are not an authority. Their licensing creates no authority whatsoever. It is always under the umbrella of the law itself. That's why they don't say. Why do some others not want to get into it? There's no litigation, and they don't want to be a part of litigation. They don't want to start making claims and then get caught up in some kind of lawsuit or something like that. But I would impress upon you that for decades these libraries have been out, and I'm just find me litigation where some creator of some library, some Creative Commons released library that has attribution, is making some kind of copyright claim against someone's musical work. Right? Now, where some of the confusion comes in is in the language about commercial use. And people get worried about, well, what if I write a composition commercially? That's not what the language is for. The language is for literally the usage of the one thing as another repackaging of the thing. It's not the use of the tool as the tool is meant to be used in the way it's supposed to be used. That's not what that language covers. You have to make a really big jump in logic to get there. We do it so easily, and I think, again, one of the reasons why we do it so easily is because we think of samples in two different ways and we conflate them as one. Samples can be a stretch of musical vocabulary, which has copyright as music, but a sample can also be merely a recorded sound. Which, that sound, by the way, that sound as a sound has protection as copyright. But these two things are differentiated. They're not the same thing. And one can't claim copyright on the other. You can't, it doesn't work that way. The law specifically differentiates them on purpose, and they're not derivative of each other in that way. Okay. So anyway, that's my quick reply. It's easier for me to just say this than to try to spell it out in a reply. And I'm not going to be getting onto the forums and other places. I will just engage here where we have this. I might spend my time on a lot of other things. But anyway, thanks for the reply. If you watch this, fine. If it makes sense, fine. If it doesn't, give me a reply. I'm happy to keep the conversation going. I really enjoy talking about it. So good luck with that. Happy mixing.